power on.
The following is a presentation of the Sovryn Tech Podcast feed.
Woo, the man of tomorrow is here, baby. And wow, what you are about to experience, because you ain't just hearing it, baby. What you are about to experience is my most recent appearance on the Agora Podcast. Of course, Sec and Penguin of the Agora Podcast, those two and I, the three of us, we have kind of turned my appearances into a sub-series of the Agora Podcast, but it seems to be a fairly popular one, certainly is in my feed, where we talk about the weird and the strange, and we just go into off-the-wall places and really just let the conversation just hang loose. It's a great time. I love it. It's rare that, anybody, let alone me, but that anybody, can find a couple of other brilliant people, and have a forum, to converse and just be able to keep playing at that high level. I love it. And so, it's something I always look forward to doing. And this is one, though, the episode you are about to hear went, I don't know, did we go 2 hours? We went over an hour. I know that. We went a while, with this added, with my intro added in, it might turn into 2 hours. That's why I say that. But regardless, we ended up talking about, I wouldn't say normal things, but we certainly didn't go on the galactic scale, nor did we get into, the nitty gritty of existence and things like that. It was a great conversation. I think there are a lot of things in it that needed to be said, needed to be questioned, that there's messages in regards to like activism, and even community building and other things that just don't get talked about enough, that I'm glad we got the chance to do it. A good chunk of this episode, though, that we did was really around Sec grilling me on Bitcoin, basically saying, you'll hear about it. But, he has a lot of questions about Bitcoin and essentially, is saying like, is this really such a great thing? Here are the problems, X, Y, Z, and we go over them. And some of the problems I don't disagree with him on. And I will admit that the ultimate conclusion we come to is that, all right, Bitcoin isn't perfect, but it's better than everything else. Now, you can argue that that's not saying much, and Sec would certainly argue that. But that's really the conclusion we come to on this. But we bring up a lot of, Sec brings up a lot of problems. I respond to them, bring in a lot of history of Bitcoin, the direction Bitcoin was supposed to go, and so on. But in the intervening weeks, and I want to say it's been 2-3 weeks or so since we recorded this, and now it's appearing in the Sovryn Tech feed. In the intervening weeks, there was an article in CoinDesk, which I'm still a fan of CoinDesk. I know some of the people that run that show, and they are just, they're playing for the right team. Let's put it that way. Okay. I still enjoy, I'm not saying CoinDesk is perfect by any means. Okay. Maybe better than Cointelegraph. I might be putting my foot in my mouth saying that, but whatever. Anyway, I deal with a lot of these crypto media outlets quite a bit in other work that I do, but that's besides the point. I still think CoinDesk puts out great stuff, and they have really brilliant people working for them. One guy, Jeff Wilzer, did an amazing piece towards the end of March 2022. It was March 21st, 2022. And here's the title: Don't Call It a Comeback, The Unlikely Rise of Home Bitcoin Mining. Now, I will link in the show notes to this article, along with some other material that I'm going to talk about here quickly. I don't need to do a huge intro, but this is something I want to get out there, because while the conversation Sec, Penguin, and I have around Bitcoin may make it seem like Bitcoin has become centralized, or that it's not all sunshine and rainbows anyway, and I still think there's a lot of validity to saying that, this article really struck me. and actually inspired me, and had me walking away feeling much better. Not necessarily, I mean, I still feel great about Bitcoin. Like, look, I love cryptocurrencies. And if anything, just the, I don't know, the beating that it gives the legacy financial system, and it really does, man, I love it. So, I'm a fan of Bitcoin. Please don't confuse anything that you hear in this episode to suggest otherwise. But I've become even more of a fan finding out that what this article is all about, finding out that there is really an underground of miners, home miners, solo miners, or even miners that are engaged, who are connected to mining pools, that are using, in crypto terms, antiquated equipment, right? Like an S9 miner, which those are from 2016 or something like that. They're using them in some ways the way that God intended, or I mean the way Satoshi intended. Anyway, where they even use them as like space heaters for their home, and that's part of their justification for running them. They'll spend $300 on getting these little older mining rigs. And yeah, they'll use them to like heat their home, even though they're very loud or whatever. They figure things out. And there's Telegram groups where people are engaged in all this. And there's this amazing, and I'll link to this as well. There's this amazing, it's a manifesto. It's not really a blog post, by a guy named Diverter. That was done in January of 2021. And it's called Mining for the Streets. And it gets into the ethos and the how-to of setting up your own mining rig, either connecting to pools or, doing like actual solo mining. Now, the funny thing is, it's amazing. And apparently like solo miners and like these more DIY mining pools are growing in popularity. Just over the past couple of years, they may make up for anywhere between 2 to 5% of the Bitcoin network. Now the mining pool thing, okay, there's a chance that, with a mining pool, which is a bunch of different solo miners joined together, sharing their hash rate, right? Their processing, and they all get like a payout. They all get part of a payout if they actually solve a block, on the Bitcoin blockchain. And that's one thing, but then like, and that's great. Like, I think that's a totally valid thing to do. But then like the solo miners, like the miners that are really just doing it on their own and just, running a node, running a miner. The attitude that these people have, and it's all in this CoinDesk article. It's absolute. I know, the term must read gets tossed around quite a bit, but really this is a must fucking read. The solo miners, like, they don't even, to some degree, they don't really care about, whether or not they solve a block. And if they're like but also, if you're in a mining pool, like you might make a little bit, or even if, you're not like solving a big, the block or whatever, like there's some money to be made, even if it's just $2 or $3 a week or $2 or $3 a day, or, something like that, whatever the math happens to be. But they have two thoughts on this. One is that the little bit of Bitcoin they do make is what you call non-KYC Bitcoin, meaning you got it anonymously, which that's one of the things SEC and I talk about, or, SEC brings up, is that the anonymity isn't actually there because, everything's become so institutional. And he's not necessarily wrong. But then there's a lot of people who still believe in Bitcoin, who believe that that's the way it should be, and they're doing what it takes to get it. Now, not only that, so there's that aspect of it, which I think makes it beneficial. And again, what's $2 or $3 in Bitcoin today could be who the fuck knows how much Bitcoin, in even just a year, or hell, even a month, could be exponentially more than that. But also the attitude that I love is a lot of these people do it just to help in even the smallest way secure the Bitcoin network, which is a point that I bring up in our conversation, on Into the Void, that say what you want about Bitcoin, it's the most secure network, computer network on the planet. And that's amazing, and there's value in that. And that's what a lot of these solo miners are doing. I mean, I have, a van lifing trip coming up. But boy, I got to tell you, if I wasn't doing that, I'd probably be getting my hands on a cheap S9 right now, and I'd start running that baby. I mean, I've already been tempted to set up like a Lightning node and other things. I mean, again, there's value in doing these. There's value in strengthening that network alone. And they bring up a point in the article as well that I thought was really fascinating. Again, you got to read this. There's also a Twitter thread I'm going to link to as well, from one of the people in the, that are a part of this story, where they explain their whole experience with solo mining. But the article brings up this point that, like any other asset, there are bear and bull markets. Now, do we wish that, Bitcoin wasn't, privy to that sort of thing? Sure. It wasn't prone, I should say. Isn't prone to that sort of thing. Of course, we'd love that. Again, you got to hear the episode of Into the Void to get, I'm giving you like a couple conclusions that we're come to, but there is a lot of stuff to extract and pull, from this episode. And that's to say nothing about the conversation that has nothing to do with Bitcoin later on. And there's a conversation around like Netflix and ecology and all that. I mean, there's a lot in this episode, but the Bitcoin thing is something I want to bring up because I read this article and it was just, again, so inspiring. But there's the chance that Bitcoin could do a really hardcore nosedive. And while right now it seems like, and it, again, seems is the key term. It seems like, like Bitcoin mining, solving the blocks is being done by effectively multi-million-dollar operations. And who can compete with that? Here's the thing. If Bitcoin ever did, I don't think Bitcoin will ever go to zero. Okay. And I've already talked about that in plenty of places. But if Bitcoin did take a dive, like a major dive, there is the very real chance that a lot of those, mining operations, multi-million-dollar mining operations, it would not be, fiscally feasible for them to keep in operation. So then what happens to Bitcoin? What happens to this incredible liberatory tool? And I still believe it is that. What happens is all of these solo miners become the most important people on the planet. And I think that there's a beauty in, being that redoubt, that, like that redundancy plan. But I think actually redoubt is probably the best term for it. Being that redoubt for this incredible network that has just grown and multiplied, and again, proven to be so useful. I mean, let's be clear here. Bitcoin was useful 10 years ago. The reasons Bitcoin existed were true 10 years ago, and they're still true today. Now, could you apply this same logic, of solo mining and everything that gets talked about in this article? Could you apply this to varying altcoins? Yeah, I think that there's absolute value in doing the same thing with Litecoin, in doing the same thing with, certain privacy coins. If, mining, like that kind of proof of work mining, is part of the program still. I mean, let's be clear here. Like with MWeb and some of the, planned implementations within Litecoin, that shit gets real interesting, and wanting to engage in bolstering that network, engaging in solo mining there, might actually be more worthwhile. So again, we talk about it in this. People think I'm a Bitcoin maximalist. I understand why they think that, but I've said it over and over again. I love Litecoin. I think Litecoin's phenomenal. I think some of the privacy coins are fantastic. Again, it's an incredibly short list of things that intrigue me. But Litecoin's certainly there, and it is still proof of work. You could engage in a similar process here, or with a similar ethos. And I think that's incredibly worthwhile. Or do it with Bitcoin. Again, there's value. There's intrinsic value in the action itself. And there's ways that you could very cleverly take advantage of the mining rig, and again, there's plenty of places out there to look into it. And I think that article is a great place to start. So I wanted to open up talking about that, saying that it's not like, as much as we were talking about Bitcoin and a lot of it may sound negative, there's still like a very real underground in Bitcoin that gets it. of like what Bitcoin was supposed to be, and they are doing their level best to keep those options available. And again, there's other, if you want to look at other cryptocurrencies, you certainly could, with that similar ethos. So I want to bring that up. And also, again, like I said, it was so inspiring to me. I loved reading this. And I mean, I only scratched the surface of what this article talks about. So you've got to read this. Probably as far as cryptocurrency goes, even though I know we're in April of 2022, I think it's safe to say this is the most important cryptocurrency article of 2022. I can't picture anything else being more important because this is talking about power to the people and fucking right. That's what cryptocurrency, certainly Bitcoin, was supposed to be about. So if you don't like that Bitcoin has gone to the institutions, to the institutionalists, to whatever, or that it's gone more mainstream, you can actually actively, balk that, while still participating in the network itself, which I think is an amazing thing. So go for it. Anyway, with all of that said, I don't want to take up any more time because you've got a brilliant conversation, not from me. The other two guys are the brilliant ones. But you've got a fantastic conversation to get into. I know we're going to be doing more Into the Voids. I mean, I don't know if we plan on doing them like monthly, but certainly, like, Sek is hitting me up all the time saying, oh yeah, we got to record again. And he's bringing up subjects that we got to get into, some of which play off of conversations that people are really finding benefit from, and I'm honored by that, from the Wednesday Q&As that are Patreon only. And of course, if you want to join that, patreon.com/Sovryn Tech. And in fact, if you join that, you also get access to the, for March of 2022, we did the live Q&A where it was a mashup between myself and the boys at the Agora Podcast. And that was awesome and allowed me to get into different subjects than I usually do also. So there's a lot to get. If you're feeling like, man, my Sovryn Tech feed, I want more, hit up Patreon. There's a lot more. I mean, a lot more. And you get the Discord channel as well, where this kind of stuff gets discussed. Yeah, great conversation to be had here, covering a lot of ground. Again, it's not all cryptocurrency. That does take up quite a bit, but we get into very important subjects even beyond that, that I think are valuable, especially if you're very ideologically inclined. Let's put it that way. So I will let the episode ride itself out, and I will see all of you on the other side.
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Agora Podcast. I'm Penguin, joined here with my co-host Sek Agora and with Dr. Brian Sovryn. We're here with another episode of Into the Void, a kind of ongoing side series we have, numbered differently and everything, but just part of the Agora Podcast experience where we really go into the weeds and discuss just a whole bunch of issues at length. And we have some great stuff on our minds just to kind of spew out to the masses. I think this will be numbered as Into the Void 2. I know our first one really was one of our episodes with Brian, where I think we at some point I think it was off air, but brainstormed the idea of this series. Basically, like I said, we just go into the weeds even more than usual. But welcome, Brian, and hey, Sek. Welcome back, Brian. We had a great time recently. Actually, why don't I mention this? We had a great time at your Q&A recently. We did a couple of days ago. And if anybody wants to hear that, you will have to either be, I think, a patron of Brian or definitely a patron of ours. So please join our Patreon. But welcome back, Brian.
Thanks, Penguin. Yeah, that I got to tell you that I've met myself. I've been doing Q&As for my patrons, on Patreon for years. I had never done like a mashup live Q&A, with other hosts from another show like that, and I thought it turned out dynamite. I know the response from my listeners, from my patrons, and it was fantastic. That episode was a lot of fun, very practical. Got to talk about things on my end that I usually I don't get into too often anyway, but that I certainly have thoughts on and support. And I mean, I don't know. I lost count of how many listeners were saying, were like clapping at what Penguin was saying throughout the thing, just like, oh man, great rant. So yeah, if you want to hear that, either sign up for the patrons, for these guys, the Agora podcast, or you're welcome to sign up, with Sovryn Tech as well. But that was awesome. And of course, I think you guys are planning on doing your own Q&As, right?
Sec, however many Sec wants to do. But yeah, Sec and I both had some great quotables. Sec had like an amazing rant towards the beginning. I think I might want to go in and clip that one out. That was pretty wild. It was pretty good for like a Q&A episode. But I know I've listened to at least one YouTube creator who does some Q&As, and I gotta say Q&As can be a really there goes Sec.
There goes Sec. The man got him. No.
I guess he'll be back.
Yeah,
we'll keep the recording going. We'll just
we'll just keep riffing. Yeah.
Oh, you want to do that? Okay. Yeah. Well, let me get my phone. Oh yeah. So Sec, when are we doing another some Q&A episodes? I know Brian brought up we might be doing some Q&As.
Oh yeah, probably once a month anyway.
Yeah,
signal lost.
I think you guys would rock at that. Somebody's GPS is working. That's great to know. We might be lost, but someone out there isn't.
And the tech is just not cooperating. I'm telling you, man.
Yeah.
Now I was riding my bike. And I was using I know this city like the back of my hand, but I was using GPS earlier, and now I just fished this out of my pocket to see if Sec was going to kind of message me just in case he had kind of catastrophic problem with his computer.
Luckily, are we still recording?
Yes.
Yeah.
We'll record it on.
Yeah, just leave all this on. It'll be awesome.
Actually, yeah. I will probably leave some of this. This is when you come back.
I'll tell you this quick. I think this is one of the most insidious things with GPS. Like Google Maps, they keep adding so many, and I hate to talk nice about Google. I kind of refuse to, but I'll do it anyway here. Google Maps, like they keep adding in such great features that aren't features that are going to get you from A to B, necessarily, but they're just like features of, like things going on around you, kind of like what they added in, like where Waze will tell you when there's a speed trap and all of this other stuff. I mean, it's so insidious because now, you're almost incentivized to just leave your GPS on, even if you already know where you're going. Weird thing. Like now they have that driving mode and all that crap.
Oh yeah.
But, I get it. Like I understand where it's helpful, but I'm like, boy, absolutely insidious just to collect all that data.
Oh, I haven't even ever thought about it like that. Yeah, I love seeing all the different routes and how the fastest route or the quickest route, or they'll try to optimize your fuel efficiency. I think Google might do that. And
or traffic alerts, right?
Yeah. I used to. I don't really have my own motor vehicle now, but like when I was driving, I was doing a lot of delivery driving, and I used to love like calling, like seeing ahead and calling it out and put it in there. I get a lot of, and of course they have it so it's gamified, so you're getting points. And I just checked it today. I stopped adding stuff to Waze. I just did one, and it pops up on the screen like it's one of those like Japanese, I don't know, games with the jewels and stuff, and it's plus one and stuff. And they were already giving you points, but now it's really gamified. But it is kind of fun when you're driving around, especially when you're doing a lot of monotonous like delivery driving and stuff like that.
Sure.
Until the feds grab you and use all your all that metadata of everywhere you've been.
Yeah. Or even worse, like when I remember the Pittsburgh police were doing this a few years ago, where they were having their undercover cars. They were tagging them and like putting the artwork on them that they were Google Maps cards, but they're actually police cars. And
oh wow,
it's totally fucked up. Google even had to come out and say, "Whoa, guys, like we'll hand over all the information to you. That's fine. We'll tell you everything, right? But just don't pretend to be us.
Right? You don't need to pretend to be us. We'll just help you anyway. So just
yeah, just hire our drivers, okay? Please don't pretend to be us.
Right. Hey, Alsec here. I wanted to tell you about agoristacres.com. They're a seed company, friends of the show. This is where I get my seeds from here at the homestead. They've got a big, wide variety of seeds. They got free shipping on orders over $20. It's fast shipping. If you place an order, it'll be shipped next business day. A lot of cool packaging, and you can pay with crypto right on the site. And they're agorists, and they also believe in the importance of producing your own food. And they have a wide variety of seeds that you won't necessarily find in a lot of other places. A lot of cool varieties, interesting seeds, and they can, if there's something that you're looking for, they can probably get it for you too. So check out agoristacres.com, and if you use promo code Agora10, you'll save yourself 10%. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Anyway, so, man, what do we got for this one? Because, with Into the Void, like Penguin said, I mean, we kind of go into the weeds, but I think we start smoking some weed here eventually. But no.
Well, let's get the less interesting stuff out of the way.
Less interesting. All right.
Yeah. So Bitcoin, you're okay. For anybody that doesn't know, you're a Bitcoin. You prefer Bitcoin over all other currencies, I would say. I don't even know if I'd call you a maximalist, but
yeah, I don't know. I've heard those words, maximalist. I don't even.
Yeah, Brian. I mean, Brian might be define him. Somebody might call Brian that, but I don't. He's not really. But he prefers Bitcoin to all others.
Yeah, I think it's the top one. I mean, there's others that I appreciate and that they have, use cases and purpose. But like, there might be 5 max, maybe 10, that I think are actually worthwhile. But, as far as how many cryptocurrencies are out there, there's probably thousands, and that might even be generous now. So, but yeah, I do keep it pretty slim, and sure, people attribute me to being a Bitcoin maximalist, and, even if they do say that, I'm kind of okay with that.
Right. Yeah. So here's what my argument is not. My argument is not that Bitcoin will ever go to zero, or that it is not a good store of value or an investment. I think it's probably a safe bet to park your money against inflation.
Yeah.
That being said, and anybody that's listening to this, just listen to Brian, because most of my knowledge of tech and crypto comes from Brian anyway. So, but a wise man once said that a bad idea before blockchain is a bad idea on blockchain.
Wait a minute. That wise man's me.
Yes.
Oh, right.
So I think I can already kind of guess this, but I mean, do you find the following things to be detrimental? So asset speculation, centralization of economic power, transparent transactions, and sort of the legacy banking system. All of these things are bad, in your opinion, or not, or detrimental to the human condition.
Yeah, I mean, I would say transparent transactions, that should be an option. But inherently it can be very bad, when you're not the one, when there is a overarching centralized power like a legacy bank.
Sure.
Yeah.
So to me, and I was in the crypto space very early on as well. And in the beginning, we were told, before I really knew how it worked, that Bitcoin was untraceable money, anonymous transactions, and it's not those things. It's a immutable ledger. And a lot of my issues, and over the course of watching Bitcoin, and some of this might be just kind of the community around Bitcoin, it seems to be a lot of integration with the legacy banking system.
Mm-hmm.
It seems to have recreated the sort of economic consolidation and centralization, and it's also just turned into like another speculative asset.
Mm-hmm.
In a lot of ways. It was not what I believed it to be in the early years of, a way to circumvent the state and the legacy banking system, and to have anonymous transactions. It's not really that. And some of that might be just the culture around Bitcoin, like, crypto bros, or some of this might actually, I've heard the case made that it's actually due to the sort of the proof of work versus proof of stake, and to couple all of that, you had, and I'm not just regurgitating Roger Ver, because I was saying this before I ever heard of Roger Ver. So, but you had the CEO of Davos dump a whole bunch of money into Bitcoin Core, which is the core development team of Bitcoin. And after that, you had a whole lot of problems, right? So all of these things seem to be not beneficial to me in terms of a liberatory tool. And if they're bad not on the blockchain, they're still bad when they're on the blockchain. And what was the last thing? Oh, the privacy aspect. So, it's not private. There's court case after court case of them being able to do chain analysis and find out who sent what transaction to who. And, yes, there is layers that they're working on now to add to it. But, a wise man once said, the more complex a technology is, the less secure it is.
Wait a minute. That's me too. No.
That's you too. So, I guess it depends on what you mean by complex, because is it more complex to have the security and anonymity baked right into the technology itself, or is it more complex to actually start adding layers and off ramps and bridges to try to achieve some anonymity or privacy in your transactions on top of the already existing technology? So that is my issues with Bitcoin as opposed to some other privacy coins is. It is not that I don't think Bitcoin is not valuable. I own Bitcoin. It's a great investment.
Right.
But I believed it to be a liberatory tool to circumvent the banking system, and I just don't think it is anymore. I think it's been integrated into the legacy banking system in a lot of ways. All right, your chance. I'll let you talk.
Wow. So I love this. This is the first time I've ever really had my words used against me. And I feel like it's that situation where, the Christians always say, well, Satan knows the Bible as well as you. And I feel like my Bible just got quoted back at me by Satan. But I'll kidding,
take that.
Of course.
I'll take that.
Take that with pride. I certainly feel proud. It's like, wow, my word has become gospel. No. Anyway, so I absolutely hear where you're coming from. And there are elements of what you said that I don't disagree with. I'm not going to, I'll respond to, as much as I can on what you brought up as far as concerns go. There are two major points though, where I do agree with you. As far as it being baked into the legacy system, yes, the main promise for me with Bitcoin, and I really hoped this happened sooner rather than later, and unfortunately, I don't know that it's ever going to happen. The main promise for me was that at some point, and I'm not saying anybody necessarily claimed that this is going to happen, but it seemed to be heavily implied that this was the direction that Bitcoin was supposed to go, or that this was something Bitcoin was going to allow for. What I wanted was if I wanted to go buy a car with Bitcoin, I wanted the price to be in Bitcoin, not in Bitcoin's value relation to the US dollar. I wanted it to be priced in Bitcoin. And Bitcoin can never be the monetary system du jour until things are priced, until bread is priced in Satoshis, is priced, in Bitcoin and not in the US dollar. Now, that can still happen because the US dollar can fail. And certainly there are plenty of, the way inflation is going right now, it's on a pretty good course to do that. But Bitcoin has, so that's a major problem. The answer to that problem is that Bitcoin has essentially evolved, and there were many paths that could have taken, since 2009. when it was launched, it has evolved into digital gold. That seems to be its purpose. That seems to be the way that it's being treated. The legacy system, of course, I think that they like that. That's what it's being right now, especially with the very tumultuous political climate and economic climate that we've been in well before any kind of war started on a grander scale. And I don't like that. I don't like that the legacy system, is excited about cryptocurrencies. Like that bothers me. And again, it's also the thing that keeps, in my opinion, Bitcoin from reaching its true potential of where it does become the money. It becomes like where, yes, we price a loaf of bread in Satoshis. We price a car in, 1 or 2 Bitcoin or whatever, And so and at this point, I don't know if that's ever necessarily, going to happen. So there's that. Do you want to respond to any of that, Sec or Penguin?
Yeah, and some of let me just real quick. Some of that is not necessarily, and some of the critiques I made is not necessarily specific to Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of that problem comes from exchanges, right, which is a problem we really need to figure out is a better, because that's the choke point, and that is the integration with the legacy banking system.
Yes.
But also, they're doing, Bitcoin IRAs and 401ks and, it's
ETFs, all that.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, Ernie Hancock says it's a goldmansucks.gov coin, it's,
yep.
And, for years and years, I'm a conspiracy nut. I'll call it like but for years and years, I was screaming that the state would love a trackable, traceable, digital currency.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it may not be Bitcoin, but if they can co-opt it enough, I think they could really use that in a way that is the opposite of the reason it was created.
Sure.
But that's not happened yet, and they might actually just make their own coin. It might literally be the U.S. Treasury makes a cryptocurrency.
The concept of like CBDC or CBDCs and stable coins, like that seems to be the direction they want to go, and not necessarily with Bitcoin. But Penguin, right. you got something?
Yeah, excuse me. The cryptocurrency technology and Bitcoin have been like tremendously popular. They got really. They're very well known, very well used. A lot of people hold Bitcoin. Okay. Mm-hmm. So I think it's been very successful in kind of spreading the awareness and the awareness to some extent or another of the technology. And often, that is, kind of a shallow understanding. But for a lot of people understand at least the basics of how the technology works and some of the potential it may have. So that again, that's been successful. So when this is such a well-known thing and it's taken off so much, I just think that some of that is inevitable. Some of the co-opting or some of there's going to be a response from banking institutions, regulators, states, in general, our government, right. That's going to happen. Like they're going to be, I don't know. So you're making an alternative currency. Anytime you've made an alternative currency and it takes off and people start using it and exchanging with it, it's just inevitable unless it's something that's built from the ground up to be absolutely untraceable, et cetera, et cetera. And there are cryptocurrencies kind of even early on that I did adopt that ethos. But Bitcoin is cryptocurrency, 1.0. It's Satoshi's original vision of Bitcoin. There are, if you really want to go into the history, there were some ideas that kind of led up to that point and that were kind of being experimented with concurrently. But basically, this Satoshi, whoever he, she, or they, whatever were, group of people, who knows, it was the proof of a concept. It was obviously something that's mutable over time, the Bitcoin program. But generally, it's a proof of a concept. It's the first iteration of groundbreaking technology. It really took off, but it's going to, once people are exchanging with it on a mass level, there is going to be institutional involvement. It is going to be something where frictionless, anonymous, not unregulated transfer from into and out of Bitcoin, free exchange of Bitcoin using the legacy banking system. And I think everybody should be have an idea of how regulated and surveilled, the legacy banking system is. I mean, I think all this is inevitable unless you kind of create something with the explicit intent to, well, I don't know about that. So with the explicit intent to kind of work outside that system and work and be anonymous and everything and be private and be underground. And then obviously that puts a huge target on your back anyway. And that's not necessarily what I think the cryptocurrency 1.0 maybe was intended to be or should have been.
Well, yeah. So I hear all of that. Part of Bitcoin. So this gets into the sidechain conversation, or like what Sec had brought up earlier, adding on complexity, to Bitcoin Core. And I do want to address that, but Bitcoin can continue to evolve. Like you can continue to add features, to Bitcoin Core. I think there's two issues that occurred. One is I agree with you, Sec, that like there was a claim, there was bad marketing. I'll put it this way. There was bad marketing years and, a decade ago that Bitcoin would be anonymous. Like it can be pseudonymous. And that's what people should have said. And eventually I feel like the marketing kind of got cleared up on that, but there was this promise of it being anonymous. Of course it wasn't. And that's where privacy coins come in, which I am also, earlier when I was saying, yeah, there's probably 5 to 10 cryptocurrencies that I would appreciate. The bulk of those outside of Bitcoin are privacy coins. For that very reason, because there is encryption, there is actual anonymity, not just pseudonymity, involved. Okay. Now Bitcoin's pseudonymity, its capability even for that, is up to debate. I'm not gonna beat around the bush about that, because there are companies who do, like you said, chain analysis. In fact, one of the names of the companies is Chainalysis, that gets millions of dollars, including government funding, to work on, essentially de-anonymizing these transactions, Bitcoin transactions, and tracking them. And that's a very real concern. And I understand that. Bitcoin really does have a target on its back, and it's had a target on its back since it started. So I hear that too. That marketing really kind of failed. Now that leads to the issue of, well, I guess we could say, the issue of complexity. Part of the problem, well, I guess there's another point I want to bring in as well, not just the issue of complexity. Because I am anti-complexity especially when it comes to software, and generally whenever it comes to anything, I don't care for complexity. But just kind of skirting on the complexity side, like the growth of Bitcoin is another major problem. Like what I was talking about with where, bread would be priced in Satoshis instead of in dollars. That would solve, if we were at that point, that would kind of solve the asset speculation problem, which I agree, can be an issue. But part of the problem is that even when Satoshi Nakamoto, whoever he, she, they, was, they were very clear. Like when Bitcoin really popped was when WikiLeaks, MasterCard had essentially kept WikiLeaks from being able to get donations. And I believe it was MasterCard, and I'm sure some other organizations in that. And so they switched to Bitcoin to get donations. And Satoshi Nakamoto came right out and said, whoa, guys, this is way too soon. Don't do this. It's not ready. Bitcoin's not ready. And I think that was a point where there was a mistake. I think Bitcoin was meant to be far more decentralized. There's also the issue. We can get into technological issues. There's the issue of what you call ASIC miners, which were, mining devices and chips that were specifically designed to mine Bitcoin really well. As to where before, I think that Satoshi Nakamoto was expecting Bitcoin to be something that would operate on the everyday computer. That did not happen. And that has led to that so the network grew way too fast. Like it should have been more distributed. It should have been like entire blockchains running on other, on everyday people's machines that found the value in Bitcoin before, like mining farms and all this stuff, kind of came into play. So, to some degree, a lot of these problems, I think we can actually blame on WikiLeaks. And I don't mind doing that myself. And I'm speaking for myself when I say that. Because again, it caused this network. This network was not ready yet, for prime time, and it forced it to go into prime time. And I think that created a lot of issues. So
wow. I did not know that at all.
Yeah.
Well, just to clarify, I have a question for you. Just to clarify, so you're saying, I don't know if I blanked out part of this or just there's no more to the story, but you said
sure.
So WikiLeaks started taking donations when they got blocked by MasterCard and or other credit card processors. So
right.
That just kind of blew up Bitcoin because of the popularity of it, and the network started becoming so much more active, and there started being so many more users and transactions on the blockchain.
Yes. And again, Satoshi Nakamoto themselves came right out and said, don't do this, but I mean, that's the beauty of it, is he couldn't control it. Right. So it's a curse and a great thing at the same time. Go ahead.
When was this?
Oh boy. Was that 2013?
Okay.
Yeah. That was 2012 or 2013.
Yeah. Well, 2012 would be early, but yeah, that's about when people started hearing about Bitcoin maybe for the first time. Probably when I first heard about Bitcoin, I can almost guarantee you, and probably most people, 20.
Yeah, because it was like April of that year when it started to go above $200, and that's when everybody, or they had that pop like in April, whatever that was for, and that's when everybody kind of freaked out, like, wow, what is this thing,
I mean, I heard the word.
I think it was 2012 because that's when I bought. Was when I was at 200.
Okay, yeah, that could have been 2012. So, yeah, and actually, I think it was 2011. Even now that I think of it, it was 2011 for when WikiLeaks allowed for that, because it had to be, because like Satoshi disappeared before any of those other events.
Okay.
So yeah, but again, it wasn't just that. I mean, it was WikiLeaks in combination with the development of like ASIC miners, like those two developments made Bitcoin go in a direction it wasn't, I would argue it kind of wasn't meant to go in. But also, it brought it to prime time well before it was ready. I mean, and I've brought this up on my show like years ago, because a lot of people would say, wait, the Bitcoin blockchain, no, it has to run on mining farms, because nobody can store, what average computer is going to store that many terabytes, of transaction data for the blockchain. But see, when Satoshi, in 2009, when Bitcoin's getting developed, I think Satoshi would have been completely within their rights to think that, oh no, in 5 years, the average laptop's going to have a 10 terabyte hard drive in it, because that was the direction things were going. But then cloud computing became a thing, and so like computers, the standard became 64 gig or 128 gig instead of terabytes. So, the original path of Bitcoin, also because of cloud computing, didn't necessarily happen. So there's a lot of things that led to that. I think Bitcoin had the right intentions, but a lot of things that ended up kind of skewing the direction, of how it was meant to go. So now, does anybody have any comments on that? Otherwise, I'll get on to the complexity.
No, you're right in describing the dream of Bitcoin, and that's why I was interested in Bitcoin and cryptocurrency to begin with, because it was
right.
Peer-to-peer, it distributed economic power and currency across anybody with a computer can now, be a part of this ecosystem, right?
Exactly.
So that was the draw, but that's not necessarily what actually happened. You know what I mean? So
right.
For whatever reason, that dream, and it took me a long time kicking and screaming to finally just be like, that dream is dead for at least Bitcoin. There's other cryptocurrencies, and maybe Bitcoin figures something else out that hasn't yet, and that's possible too. And it's still a good place to park your money rather than the US dollar. I will agree with there. But in terms of like, I'll let you get back to the complexity thing, but in terms of it being a distributed economics, the distribution of economic power and the what is the word I'm looking for? The anonymous transaction and microtransaction, like you said, buying bread from, your local farmer with Bitcoin without the government knowing about it. That's what we want in a liberatory currency. And it's just kind of fell short of that,
Yeah. So go ahead, Penguin.
Well, I just wanted to say, but I didn't say, yeah, so some of the altcoins that have propagated, they all take, most of them, the vast majority of them, being based squarely off the Bitcoin original, I don't know, open source.
Yeah,
code.
Bitcoin code.
Yeah. Yeah, code. So I'm not really a software guy.
No, that's right.
So some of the myriad, like main problems that say a certain altcoin might be designed to solve, or major changes, like the one that's showcased in said altcoin. Some of them have been, I know for a fact, like not being able to be, I don't know how they do it exactly, but not like precluding mining it on like ASIC type miners, or trying to make it, doing something to make it distributed so that it can be ran on, so it can only be, I think, or not be more profitably mined on ASIC type miners or miner farms or something like that. So to keep it as that distributed, and also, obviously the scalability and different aspects of the network where it can keep transaction fees low and allow for microtransactions, which is also another problem among the myriad different kind of altcoins that have certain lists of problems and tweaks to the Bitcoin to solve certain problems, or move that, to kind of place that altcoin going in a certain direction from Bitcoin.
Right. Yeah. So, there are, like, a lot of the initial altcoins were trying to the things they were trying to solve, because I think they recognized the problems with growth and adoption. Like Litecoin, one of Litecoin's original goals was because what happened was, years ago, people found out, you can actually mine Bitcoin with a graphics processor instead of the central processor in a computer. And so, that just scaled things like crazy, and we're still dealing with that today. Especially if you're a PC gamer, you know how hard it is to get a graphics card today, or the price you're going to have to pay to get one. But yeah, that was their original points of existence, was, okay, how can we make transactions faster? And how can we, make mining resistant to GPUs, or maybe even ASICs and things like this? None of that ever really worked out. But early on, people recognized that this would create problems in the future, and they did their best. But I think now the cryptocurrency community at large has just come to say that, well, there's nothing, we can't resolve this, or they go with proof of stake, or they go with like some kind of different proof algorithm. So yeah, and part of my argument for altcoins comes down to being test beds for different ideas that can later be used in Bitcoin. It's one of the reasons I'm a huge fan of Litecoin. I always see that as, and there's an old saying in cryptocurrencies, as old as cryptocurrencies are, there's an old saying that, Litecoin is the silver to Bitcoin's gold. And I still think that really holds true. It's a great experimental, it's a great test bed for, for what you want to do in the future with Bitcoin. Because, for me, I guess getting into a bit of the complexity. Well, actually, before I get into the complexity, I think the ultimate argument, or not the ultimate, but what would be one of the final arguments for why Bitcoin, like why use Bitcoin, comes down to that it's better than any other currency out there right now. And I think we'd probably all agree with that it's better than at least any government, sanctioned currency on the planet. You can tell me if I'm wrong.
Hey, it's Zach. I wanted to tell you guys about Cozy Graphics. She is she's local to me. She's in our Freedom Cell. Very like-minded individual. She is starting a graphics company. So this spot is for all you entrepreneurs out there. For your graphics and advertising needs, call Cozy Graphics. She provides creative custom solutions like logo design, brochures, and flyers, leave behind cards, business cards, menus, banners, and posters, vehicle magnets, booklets, and catalogs. To schedule a free consultation, call Cosima at area code 865-544-8623. And I can vouch for this person. I know them personally. Very, very cool and decent human being. And again, she's very like-minded. And so check her out. She's just starting out. And send her your business if you need it. Thanks.
You're saying Bitcoin is better than like the US dollar, like a state currency? Oh,
Right.
Okay, sure. If you want to set the bar there.
Well, right. Yeah, that's a low bar. See,
I have piles of shit in my yard that are better than the US dollar. That's not saying anything. You know what I mean?
Right. I agree with you. But I think that's where most people get excited is they are comparing it to, because I'm not making the argument that Bitcoin is perfect money. There are plenty of people out there who would make that argument that Bitcoin is perfect money. I wouldn't say that. However, I would also invert that. And I would say there is no money itself is not perfect. It's not even like a perfect solution, I think, to anything. It's a haphazard thing and has been since money was cowrie shells, and with that, as long as I've made that clear. But I think that's the argument that it's going to come down to is that, there's a beauty in the argument that Bitcoin is like this thing that is not, it wasn't blessed and given permission by the government for you to hold it. And a lot of people got excited about it, myself included, just because of that, because it's something that had value that, came out of just literally the people, and it did not come out of the government. It was not top down. It was bottom up. And that's an incredible thing. But yeah, I'll be the first to say it's not perfect money, but again, then I would also invert it to, that money in and of itself is not perfect. But I want to address the point of complexity. I also share that concern, because a lot of what they want to do is side chains, and even with other cryptocurrencies where they want to, do like cross-chain transactions and all these things become massive security problems, because, okay, we can secure, like, the amazing thing, as bad as you could argue mining farms are for myriad reasons, be it centralization of power, be it the use of power in relation to the environment, things like this. At the same time, all those mining, setups are creating the most secure computer network that anybody's ever seen. But that's the base core, not side chains, not any of these other features that are necessarily getting, kind of tacked on, say through like the Lightning Network and others. Now I like the Lightning Network, what it's doing. But I do have issues of security around that. And that's part of the reason I'm also supportive, like I said earlier, of privacy coins, because they're baking it in from the get-go. And I appreciate that, even though, what it takes to get there, some people might have problems with. I appreciate that and think there's value in that. And I don't see, and this is an argument I've made for a very long time, like, just based on our own history, what we know, our knowledge of history of the past, even just the past 1,000 years, the freer the world is, the more currencies there are, not less.
Yes.
Okay. And this is really, really key. And this is an old argument for altcoins, and it's a good one. That, and because again, we can look back, we can see before power was getting as centralized as it is today with, we go before World War II, even before World War I, there were more currencies, not less. And, when you consider that, then the idea that there are currencies that get used for specific purposes becomes quite viable, I think, as to where, okay, yeah, we have Bitcoin that could be like the more open transactions. And that can be like the storage of, that can be the digital gold, right? But then Zcash could be, the anonymous transactions, or Monero could be the more, could be the species that gets used to actually buy bread, and things like this, because, once they are all digital, they're easy to interchange. None of this, in my opinion, is a perfect world situation. It's all tacked on haphazard. Okay.
No, that's the way
But-
it should be. It should be.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, I'm in total agreement here.
Okay.
Yeah. Go ahead. Sorry.
No, that's all right. So, but that's essentially what I've got. So I agree with a lot of your concerns. Really, the argument for Bitcoin is, well, even in its early days, you could say it's a proof that, money can exist without government intervention. And there's a beauty in that. And there's certainly like technological developments that came along with it, like breakthroughs that are really impressive. But ultimately, the argument for Bitcoin is that it's just better than anything else out there, as far as like that gets commonly accepted, and that's really all I can say on it. Like there absolutely are problems with it. You're totally right.
Oh, so your argument is that in comparison to any other currency in the world that is widely adopted, Bitcoin is probably the best of them.
Yeah.
We don't disagree there. My issues with Bitcoin sort of come in comparison to, what I think cryptocurrency should be, and also more other cryptocurrencies as well. And I'm with you. I want to see thousands of different currencies for lots of different use cases, and whether that's digital or local labor notes or gold or tobacco, rice. I don't care what it is. I want to see lots of different mediums of exchange. I think the more the better. But no, we don't have a disagreement that, one, Bitcoin is valuable, and two, that it's better than, government currencies. Of course it is.
Right. Yeah. As far as why I don't think it's perfect, well, here's the thing. What it kind of is perfect for, that you could argue, is it's perfect for a world connected by the big bad internet. And I don't disagree. Like when people call it magic internet money, you're absolutely right. But then, ask me the question of, do I think the internet's a good thing? And, most people aren't going to like the answer that I give. So there's that, even though Bitcoin can operate without the internet, of course, as we know it. But yeah, so a lot of the excitement around cryptocurrencies in general really comes down to, and this is a genuine problem. It comes down to, if it's not, maybe people are happy to get away from the legacy, like from varying legacy institutions. They still want the world to essentially operate the way that it is. And, they still want somewhat of the status quo, at least culturally, or societally. And, like I take issue with that. But again, that's getting into massive subjects, much bigger subjects.
Yeah, no, we don't disagree. Okay, so I think we is there anything else we want to add to this?
I thought we were going to like raise fists or something, but
no. So we're kind of measuring we're using two different metrics.
Yeah, right.
So you agree with the metrics or in the criticisms I have of it, but you're measuring with a metric which I agree with. Like, okay, yes, it's valuable. I do appreciate the first to market, the innovation of Bitcoin and Satoshi and the blockchain, of course.
Mm-hmm.
I just it would not be my first choice for using it as an alternative to other currencies. Like it would not be if I was trying to build alternative institutions, Bitcoin would not be my first choice.
Sure.
You know what I mean? So, and that is why, it boils down to like, what is your reasoning for using cryptocurrency?
Right.
So if you want to stave off inflation, like, okay, sure, Bitcoin's a safe bet. But if you're trying to do, some shenanigans that you don't want to get, caught for, then maybe you might choose something else, so that was my only problem with Bitcoin. That, and a lot of this is cultural, and I know this is not you necessarily, but there does seem to be a lot of people who want to, like you said, keep the status quo and just plug Bitcoin right into it.
Yeah.
And there's nothing to be done around that. It just seems to be like, so, they seem like the hedge fund managers of Bitcoin. They just seem it's like the culture surrounding some people that are heavily involved in Bitcoin. And I don't know that that's necessarily a problem with Bitcoin itself. It's just kind of the atmosphere around it.
Yeah. I mean, or go ahead, Penguin.
I was just going to say that's real. There's kind of a separation from Bitcoin as technology. I think we're largely approaching, but not necessarily from the actual like tech, like coding level, but the technology of Bitcoin and cryptocurrency versus the financial aspect of Bitcoin. And when you financialize it, am I still coming through?
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. When you financialize it and you make it into an asset that's traded on exchanges, and the normies get involved, so to speak, it becomes an entirely different thing, totally divorced from the tech. And I think a lot of the reasoning behind Satoshi's development of the technology, and I don't want to go on to say, like people that are not of a certain type or with a certain intention shouldn't adopt Bitcoin. Obviously, mass adoption is really important for currency. It's kind of like currency has vast network effects, like vast network effects. Some of the biggest network effects of any kind of thing. But at the same time, once you start divorcing Bitcoin from the underlying technology and the possibilities of that technology, because it's obviously all open source software, you really start getting two things. So you start seeing it as kind of an financial asset that's just supposed to go up and down, and hopefully the line just keeps going up, and you're going to get rich and everything. And I don't want to get into the economics of all that, but I mean, there is. Yeah, if you hold on to it over time, it's proving its value. The value is somewhat based off of like the value of the technology, and for being an early adopter, I totally think you should have the value of your assets rise. Except that at this point we need exchange, economic, not just financial, but economic activity occurring with or on the blockchain with blockchain technology. That's one thing. Secondly, actually, I forgot where I was going with the second point.
Well, let me just ask quick. So you're saying we're more in need of a medium of exchange than an asset right now? Is that what you're kind of getting at there?
Well, specifically to what I was saying right there, which is that specifically what I was saying, whereas like if people are parking their money, so to speak, into it, and when it's financialized, so that goes. I know that speaks to like the network and the scalability of the network and a lot of parameters around the Bitcoin code, which is changeable, but it's ultimately like Bitcoin has a certain code that's changed in iterations, and it has scalability issues. Okay, so we know that. So largely, Bitcoin is becoming an asset that's where it's a store of value versus a medium of exchange, and certainly, like it's functioning as the store of value and such. And there's anybody can start an altcoin that can do the exchange thing. So I'm not too worried about that, except that the financialization and the popularity of Bitcoin, when you're not aware of the underlying technology, then you're only mildly aware of competing altcoins, competing digital currencies that will solve some of the problems, that do offer different advantages. There's pros and cons of each, different features to them. So when you're financializing it, so when you're approaching it only as like a stock or a bond, it's not going to like should the SEC regulate or anything like that. But when it's like when you're kind of just looking at purely as a financial instrument, like you're just trying to make money, and you're not aware, you don't care at all about like working outside the legal. You might even work for a bank. Who knows? There is maybe an awareness because some of the Cash App might let you buy Litecoin in addition to Bitcoin, or some PayPal or something. There might be some awareness that there are other currencies, but not what is an altcoin, what is the Bitcoin code, who controls it, what's the purpose behind it, what was the vision laid out in this Satoshi's white paper. So a lot of people, and I'm not saying like mass adoption needs to be like everybody has to be an ANCAP. But what I'm saying is that a lot of people that might be very enthusiastic about Bitcoin and cryptocurrency in general might not really get what the actual ecosystem looks like, at least as far as the technology or the technology aware side.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, this gets into the old, like, how do we make Bitcoin work for grandma? And I mean, my argument was always, you don't. Like, it's not for her. Grandma can use PayPal or whatever, and that's fine. And it's not an insult to grandma either. I do think, well, anyway, this could get into a completely different conversation. But I will say this, like the biggest thing that pleases me about Bitcoin is a lot of really very ethical and, I would argue, philosophically minded, and I think in the right direction, people who may have, and I say may have never made $1 million, have made $1 million. And I'm glad that they did, and I know a lot of those people are funding amazing things going on around the world now. So if anything, even if it's not perfect, and I don't think it is, it is something that has done a ton of good in the world already. So I'll leave my thoughts at that.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there too. So yeah, no, that's good.
Yeah. So please donate to us in Bitcoin. Anyway.
Yeah, please give us your Bitcoin. Come on, there's a lot of millionaires out there that could be funding us, Brian.
Right? I know.
Well, they say Bitcoin's like digital gold, and if it is, I wouldn't mind getting some gold. I may not go buy lunch with gold, but I wouldn't mind getting some gold.
Right on.
Right. What else were we going to fight about? Oh, all right. So okay. So you had an episode on NFTs, which everyone listening to this should go listen to. And I entirely agreed with most of your opinions on NFTs. They're they're money laundering. Thanks. Yeah, it's fucking nonsense.
Yeah.
So, but I can't remember what your exact comment, and help me if I get it wrong, but you said something about if you watch Netflix, you shouldn't be able to criticize Bitcoin for being damaging to the environment. Was that something along those lines, right?
Yeah. All right. Well, here, real quick, I'll summarize.
I'll let you put your gloves on. Go ahead.
Yeah. Let me lace these up. Come here, Mick. All right. So, so you have a lot of people online arguing against many cryptocurrencies, but particularly Bitcoin, saying that it is disastrous to the environment because of the amount of electricity that that these mining operations use and everything. And I hear where they're coming from, but then my problem is those same people turn around and are watching something on Netflix, and nothing takes energy and like clogs a network and everything else like streaming video. Streaming video is anyway. And so I don't just mean Netflix, but streaming video in general is, by the arguments of why cryptocurrencies are bad for the environment, streaming video is 1,000x worse. But none of them are doing anything about that, or claim, or yelling at Netflix about that stuff. They'll yell about Netflix at other things, but not because of environmental concerns. So that was my point. Go ahead, Sec.
So this to me sounds like the same argument, like you can't be an anarchist if you drive on the roads.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like,
sure.
So listen, I make criticisms of cryptocurrency for being detrimental to the environment. But I think something I said to you was like, look, I took a shit this morning, and because of the system that we live in, that is detrimental to the environment. So seriously, it is, because of the way they fucking handle our municipal systems and the water treatment and whatever else. And we could be composting it instead of, but the way the system is set up, I'm fucking the environment just by taking a shit this morning. So does this mean I cannot criticize other things that affect the environment? Because what my point is we're all hypocrites. Nobody's hands are clean, and a lot of this is systemic and virtually unavoidable, the economic devastation. So I don't think that this, because they do other things that are detrimental to the environment, does not mean they cannot criticize other things that are detrimental to the environment. especially if they're at least doing something to work towards, lessening their impact on the environment. You know what I mean? Because like I said, no one's hands are clean. Now, I will say about cryptocurrency, I at least feel like they're striving to address the economic concerns by investing in water power generation, or using the heat that's generated from the mining, setups and trapping,
or even
that.
Geothermal, technology. Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think the incentives are there for them to be more responsive to addressing environmental concerns than, say, the legacy banking system or fucking Netflix or my local municipality where I take a shit.
Yeah.
I recognize that, at least, even though crypto is detrimental to the environment, I think that they have more of an incentive to improve than in any other situation. But my problem was mostly that we're all detrimental to the environment.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean we cannot criticize. This is the same thing when statists tell us, Brian, that, well, if you're an anarchist, you must not drive on the roads then, because no, the entire system is set up around us, so we only have XYZ options. So just because I'm against having this system doesn't mean I cannot use this system. You know what I mean? So
yeah. Well, okay. So I'll start off by quoting my old friend and hero, no longer with us, but Harlan Ellison, where, he said, your principles are your principles, but if you stick to them 100%, you're just going to walk around naked and hungry. And I think he's totally right about that, at least in the world that we're in right now. And so, I hear where you're coming from on this. I mean, I have genuine problems, not problems. I have genuine arguments against Netflix. I think that there are kind of abstracts to it that I think send us down a certain path that is the antithesis, at least for, what I hear from a lot of ANCAPs, libertarians or whatever. It's the antithesis of the future that they claim to want. And I guess the short version of my reason for saying this a lot is it's making an argument to make people rethink their positions and to not be so staunch in their positions. I am, most people would probably be shocked by this. I mean, but I'm actually a pretty hardcore environmentalist. I do so many little things throughout the day that have become pretty much second nature, that I do completely out of, concern, for the planet Earth. Again, that's not always, and I'm sure you've encountered this too, Sec. I mean, it's not always a popular thing to be saying that you care about the environment is, that's a great way to clear a room at a libertarian festival. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I know it.
Yeah.
And I don't think we should have ceded that ground to the liberals. I don't know when the liberals became the fucking stewards of the environment and not libertarians and anarchists.
Right.
And there's plenty of green anarchists and I love them all, but
yeah, same.
But generally speaking, people associate environmentalism with voting Democrat or whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
And my environmentalism couldn't be further from the Democratic Party if I tried. You know what I mean? Right. It's not. So I don't know why that is. And I think we're seeing a little shift in that these days, but you're absolutely correct. And nobody wants to hear it from a lot of the people in our circles.
Yeah. I mean,
go ahead, Penguin.
Speaking to part of that is that, ideas. So that's a pretty popular idea. We like the environment. We like nature. We live in nature. I mean, to some extent or another, we certainly depend on it. And I think, all ideas have to sort through this political system that has these two parties and everything. I mean, I know we all know this. So I think for a lot of things, our messaging can get really muddled when it comes down to basic concepts. I think that a lot of us should be in agreement on.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, there's people that say, well, yeah. I mean, I'm a conservative and I like to hunt and go camping and go outdoors. And that's why I think that there should be some preservation of lands, or some sort of environmental, some sort of movement to keep the environment clean or something. I mean, you can approach it from all sorts of different levels. But I think on another level, I mean, sort of.
And we're back.
Okay. Yeah, I think another thing with liberalism, speaking in like the broadest sense, is that I think, so if you do have a movement for like green initiatives or pro-environmental regulation and so forth, that kind of couching it within a political movement or an ideology that does center production and capitalism and stuff, kind of prevents it from going in the direction of maybe very different or more radical, maybe your type of environmentalism. So while it's largely obviously the obvious thing, you're sorting things into the left, right, red, blue paradigm, I think there is probably some insidious thing where, kind of couching it in liberalism prevents.
That's a great point.
Yeah.
Kind of boxes it in a little bit.
To water down or co-opt more radical ideals into sort of milquetoast liberalism.
Mold it into a completely different thing. It's happening within the framework of, capital and production.
Yep. No, I agree with that.
Yeah. I mean, I've always felt that like, environmental regulation came out of just some, rich Democrat, like didn't like what was happening in their backyard, didn't like their view, I mean, because there's constant, I mean, and it's not just like small things. I think it's like big things that are just contradictions. Like, okay, we don't want to use nuclear anymore, or we got to care about the environment, so we want to go to wind power. But then, a municipality will propose to put a wind farm, within the town that's going to power however many houses and everything. But it's in view of the people on the hill. And so they're like, oh, no, fuck no, you can't do that. You can't put that wind farm there. Right. And so it's like, well, wait, guys, which one do you want? And anyway, that's what a lot of this comes down to, as far as like why I make some of these that'll come off as very extreme arguments, because I don't actually hold that. I mean, I do, like I said, I am a hardcore environmentalist. I like to say ecologist, but whatever, the term is what it is. But I make some of these extreme statements because I'm very much trying to like shake them out of their really black and white thinking. Because I don't think people realize, like they say, oh, well, email is so great for the environment. No, it's not. Like paper is a renewable resource. It's a remarkable thing. And it's not bad for the environment. Now, what is bad for the environment is and even mail isn't as bad for the environment as email is, considering the amount of power generation that a server farm does that even just runs, we'll say like that runs Gmail. What the real problem is, and I could say it's the post office in a way, but the issue is like all these fucking flyers that you get for no reason, but are what actually keep the U.S. post office in fucking business. Like it's not your letters or your mail that keeps the post office in business. It's all this, all these bullshit ads, that come your way. So like paper mail is a great and wonderful thing. Arguably, it's far better for the environment. Now it gets abused, like I just said, but it's way better than email is. But most people think because it's not something that they're holding in their hand, because it's something that just exists in the ether, they instantly think that it's better. They instantly think that somehow, like, okay, it's not destroying anything because it's just out there, in the wind. When that's not remotely true. And the people arguing for, again, also that would argue for, like, say, oh, you should, Bitcoin is an environmental disaster, blah, blah, blah. I get where they're coming from. I would also argue, like we were talking about earlier, that the actual direction Bitcoin was meant to go in originally would not have been so much of an environmental concern because it wouldn't have led to these gigantic, like mining operations. It would have led to, it's something that would have just been running on everybody's computer that everybody already has and had at the time,
Right.
So, there's a lack of understanding on the part of people arguing against, or arguing for Bitcoin being environmentally bad. I think often enough on that. I'm not saying that's true for everybody. But my statement that I get, and I can sound really passionate about it. My statement that, well, Netflix is 10 times worse or 1,000 times worse, which it is to get them, is usually to get people to like rethink things. But yes, we can absolutely say that all of these things are bad. We can definitely argue for both. We can still use both because, hey, just like everybody else, I got to eat, and if that's because I get a Bitcoin donation, great. Like this is what I need to do in the world that I live in. I'm working my ass off to create the world that I want, of course. But yeah, so I hear you, and I think you're ultimately right. But I do think it's important that as many people as possible bring up the counter narrative just to shake these people up. But at the same time, how many of these people on Twitter are fucking real? Like how many of them aren't actually just bots or like, one person with 1,000 accounts saying, "Oh, Bitcoin bad," and they
don't actually care about the environment at all.
No, right. They're just working for Hillary Clinton or something. Wait,
right? No, I agree.
I shouldn't have said that. Did anybody get shot? We're good. Okay, let's. Every time I say her name, I get scared.
It'll happen when the mics go off. Don't worry.
Yeah, right. They wait till we're done.
Right. Wow, surprisingly, Brian, Penguin, and Sick all don't shot themselves in the back of the head for twice. I don't know why. It's weird.
Weird. Now we're hanging with Harambe. Oh no.
Right. No. Okay. So, you know what? As you were saying, why you were saying that, I recognize the meta irony of like your idea. The reason you said it was to provoke thought and conversation.
Yeah. And
then we're having thought and conversation about that, so like your plan worked,
Yeah.
Like here we are talking about it like 3 weeks later. So I mean, okay, fine. Like I understand what you're saying, and like I just sometimes like, and I'm not saying this was you at all, but some people get like that, like sort of holier than thou, or like not even holier than thou. I'll give you an example, right?
Please. Yeah.
My father and I got into a fist fight on a holiday over Dunkin' Donuts coffee. Okay. So my father, he believes very similar to the way we do. Hates war, hates the government.
Right.
But I'm on the road trying to drive. I just spent part of the day with my now ex-wife's family, and then we're rushing to go to his house for whatever the fucking stupid holiday it was. And it was like a long drive, and we stopped and got coffee at Dunkin' Donuts. Now, my old man starts arguing with me because, well, the way he worded it was Dunkin' Donuts, they make weapons for the government. Now, my father was not good at explaining things, but if you actually like try to understand what he's saying, is that the parent company that owns the IP of Dunkin' Donuts also has contracts with the U.S. military. And so we're getting into an argument. And I said, he's like, "You're supporting the war machine." And I said, "Listen, man, like, did you pay your Verizon bill today?"
Right.
Do you have U.S. dollars in your pocket right now? I mean, I don't know what else supports the war machine if not the petrodollar. Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Are you paying your taxes? Like, there is no ethical consumption under the system. You cannot entirely. It's like you said, you're either naked or fucking hungry. There is no way to like entirely pull out your support for everything. Like I've said before on this podcast, there's no way to be 100% agorist unless you're living in the middle of the fucking woods or you're dead or in jail.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So
I had Dunkin' Donuts today.
Right. Okay. So I mean, their coffee is shit, but it was the only thing that was on the road. But the point was, so then we get into like screaming match and blah, 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 and fucking whatever. But years later, he came back and he said, "You know what? You were fucking right. You're right. Everything, like there is no escaping it. Every company has a parent company that fucking makes, shits oil into the water or fucking, has some contract with the government. It's like intertwined with all of this system. There is no escaping it. And I don't mean to say that because like I think there is no hope and there's nothing we can do, but you get some people that are like, well, you're not doing enough, but you should do things the way I do them. You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not saying that was you, but
yeah, no, I hear that.
Like, it's not a holier than thou, but like, you know, what are you doing? You're not doing enough, and you should activism the way I act, or try to live the way I live, because, you know, you shouldn't buy Dunkin' Donuts, or you shouldn't do XYZ thing. And well, the thing is like everybody's going to do like what they can when they can in their own time, and nobody's fucking hands are clean in any of this. So to look down anybody's nose at anybody else is or it rubs me the wrong way, you know?
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And go ahead, Penguin.
Real quick, if you like, let's say you don't buy that coffee from Dunkin' Donuts, like 2 coffees. All right, what's that going to change? Is any of that going to change whatsoever? Does Dunkin' Donuts existence, the franchises and the IP holder, which is the one I guess is connected with the parent company because they're all franchises, like, is that is them selling you these donuts? One thing, they're all franchises anyway, so at least they're somewhat locally owned. But sure, the big Dunkin' Donuts, I guess the people making the donut recipes or whatever are in bed with big global business. Okay. I'm just thinking too much about the whole structure of the
what is my 2 coffees really going to make a difference? Right.
Yeah, exactly. And is there like proffering donuts to us and croissant wraps or whatever really dependent on them being part of this global empire, corporate empire conglomerate that it also involves weapons production and petroleum and God only knows what else? Clearly not. I mean, but frankly, it's all connected. It's all interlaced web. It's like the distributed network, but in the way of big businesses.
Yeah, it's very complicated because you can't. Because at the same time, like the coffee you got from Dunkin' Donuts could have given you the energy and like the mental prowess to come up with an invention that could bring down the state tomorrow, and like, so what do you, but that's not saying that, oh, well, thank you, Dunkin' Donuts necessarily. Right. It's just that we are like, and this is something, especially with what's going on in Ukraine, this is something that, and Russia, that everybody's realizing right now is just how interconnected everything is. It's Leonard Reed's iPencil on steroids. And I mean, you can't really get away from any of it. It's good to be a conscientious consumer. My argument for being a conscientious consumer is to, what you buy. I mean, food is a different situation because you're just shitting that out. But what you buy is something that is always thinking about the long term, and that's, like not feeding more money into this system as much as possible is like, to me, that's the only way you can be a conscientious consumer. You can't be a conscious consumer or an educated consumer and say, well, I won't use oil because, again, okay, so you bought an electric car, but then that electric car is powered by the electric plant that's powered by Middle Eastern oil. Like, so you haven't gotten away from anything. The only thing you can really do, I think, it's not the only thing. There's always more things you can do. But one of the only things you can really do is just think really long term, which the system is set up to make you think short term. So you're already bucking the system, even just in thinking long term, which is, great activism on its own, in my opinion.
And small steps in your day-to-day life, like,
yeah,
you don't have to entirely uproot your whole life and change everything about what you do to try to be more environmentally conscious or more an agorist or whatever your goal is, right? But you can start making small steps that really will make a difference as long as they can, also benefit you in the the short, medium, and long term. Whether that's, I don't want to support the agricultural system that's polluting the environment and ruining our food and X, Y, Z. Okay, well, start by, plant a few tomatoes or, or I always go back to food production because that's my thing. But
yeah, sure.
It might be whatever it is for you, or, you know what I mean? Like, okay, I'm concerned about our use of petroleum, right? So maybe, you start, riding a bike to work or whatever whatever it is, small steps in your life that actually can make a difference. And I also agree with you, thinking long term is a beneficial way to kind of buck the system. But go ahead.
Yeah. Well, I was just going to say, I mean, this is something that, oh man, very early on, like when I moved to, giving you a little inside baseball here, I guess, very early when I moved to New Hampshire. I moved to New Hampshire in 2011. And I moved here for the Free State Project. I knew I was moving here to engage in some kind of activism, whatever that would end up being. Okay. And I remember going to like gatherings, of liberty-minded folk. And you always had those people, and I think these are the kind of people you were also talking about, Sec. You always had those people who, like, someone would be excited about the activism they did, whatever it was, holding up a sign near town hall or something like that. And then you'd get that slapnuts that would just say, like, oh, why are you wasting time with the government? That's unethical. That's this, that's blah, blah, and then they go down this whole thing. And it's like, yeah, but they're doing what they thought they could, and that's a really key thing, I think, to get in, is that, everybody has their capabilities and everybody has their own heart's calling and their own thresholds for what they're comfortable doing.
Yes.
Okay. And we can consider those things, if you personally want to consider any of these things to be a waste of time, that's on you, but that's not on the person. To them, it's not a waste of time. And even if I disagree with it, they're doing what they can, and you can respect somebody still. Where is their heart at? I'm a big fan, and this is another problem that I feel like, well, a lot of forward thinking people are on this kind of kick, and it's ironic because I don't think it makes them forward thinking, where they want to discount a person's intentions, right? And I know we have the old Shakespeare saying the road to hell is paved in good intentions. But intentions are important. Intentions do matter. Intentions should count for what a person intended to do. If it fucked up, it fucked up, but at the same time, what was their intention? I think that is something that should be considered. But I'm really worried about, like, the trend, especially in like therapy and other places, where it's like, oh, well, it doesn't matter what your intentions were, it's what you did. No, the intentions do matter. And I don't think we pay enough attention to that, Anyway, that kind of got into a little bit of a different direction than I necessarily expected. But the important thing is that just recognize that people will do what they can, and you've got to let that be enough. Otherwise everybody's going to disappoint you, and you're going to hate everybody. And where are you going to get with that? I can tell you, because I'm somebody that does hate everybody. It's not a happy life.
Right. And what's the result of, okay, like you said, at least they're trying, at least the intent is there, at least their heart's in the right place, right?
Sure.
So by taking shits on what, small steps or actions people are making, what do you think the result of that is going to be? It's a 50-50. They might really amp it up because you took a shit on them.
Yep.
Or they might just say, well, that's all I can do. And apparently that's nothing, and not do anything.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So now you had somebody like, I keep going back to food, but okay. So like, oh, all you're growing is a couple of tomatoes. You got to completely like pull yourself away from the agricultural system. You're not really making a change at all. It's like, well, you might have just told that person to stop. They might not do it at all because that was all they had time to do, or all the resources they had.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, so now you basically just said, well, what you're doing is basically nothing. So they might as well fucking do nothing, because that's all they could do. Why am I doing anything then?
Right. And then nothing changes because nothing's getting done.
Never happens. Exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. And this is, actually to go back to the Q&A that we recently did, the live Q&A. So folks, if you want to hear this, and you really should, of course, sign up for the Agora Podcast Patreon, or you can sign up for mine, either one. Because we talked about this. We got the question from one of your listeners. Hey, but I don't want to leave the city. What do I do? Right. And it was a great question to ask. And, even you brought it up, Sec. It's like, yeah, we've got to back off on that. I'm just saying, hey, get out of the city. Like, people are going to do what they can do, where they want to do it, where they have to do it, perhaps for whatever reasons happen to be theirs, because they're the reasons. And, come up with the solutions from there. And, even if it's baby steps, things are still changing. And that's ultimately what matters. I think is a degree of change. We can get to the big stuff, later on, but the better foundation we have from a bunch of small stuff getting done, even in the cities, the better off we are.
Yeah. I want to look at that from a different perspective too, kind of based on the example that Seth gave. So let's say you are making some pretty big steps, at least like for you. So in relations to your life, you're making some like big steps, maybe some sacrifices, maybe some just big changes. But you're making decisions that ultimately put you in a situation where you may be more liberated or even able to, or ultimately, so you may be in a position ultimately to more effectively resist the state, being a more liberated state. All right, great. So on the other hand, so you're making these big like changes in your life, and you're making these steps in the direction of resisting and or of liberation. And yeah, maybe you do like a support your local coffee house. So don't go to Starbucks if possible. Maybe like like to go to the Wawa or the Taco Bell or Dunkin' Donuts or whatever. I love all those things. I actually like fast food a lot, and I burn a lot of calories, so I eat like trash, and it's going to catch up with me one day. But frankly, I like nice tasting things. I like a little treat. I like to kind of pig out sometimes, and it's like, okay, I can't take myself, especially being in an urban situation where I'm not growing any of my food or anything like that. I can't be in a situation where like I can live organically or kind of live off of food that I've grown and everything. So yeah, I might like to splurge. I might want to enjoy some creature comfort sometimes. And believe me, living in an urban environment is innately stressful. There's like an innate stress level that we don't even recognize. But I think you couldn't get on somebody because you saw them in the moment consuming some kind of capitalist, what's the word people use? Decadence. But not knowing that they're under like, they're making like great strides and making sacrifices. Like I think to some extent I do, to be outside the corporate governmental state system as much as possible.
You're saying you don't know what the other things that person is doing, right? Is that what you're saying?
Well, you could be doing, but you're talking about making baby steps. When making baby steps, I'm saying maybe maybe the person's making in relation to their own lives like really big steps. But does that mean you swear off every kind of decadent capitalist consumption?
Right. Yeah. No. I get
the small things ultimately. Ultimately, like kind of inconsequential things. Okay, maybe those things aren't even great for you. Maybe, in a lot of cases, they aren't. But I mean, hey, you gotta reward yourself. You can't just kind of go be a hermit somewhere because that's the only way, like you said, to ethically not consume.
Yeah, I feel like a lot of what we're all saying here is, the old adage of don't let the perfect get in the way of the good.
Yeah.
But I don't think that message, especially in our circles, I don't think that message gets out enough, frankly. I don't think we plan on this conversation going this direction. And ironically, it kind of applies to Bitcoin too, right? It's like, okay, yeah, Bitcoin's not perfect, but then look what it has done, and yeah, it's important that this gets out there because, and I know I've been there where I've been like kind of that hardline guy and like, and I kick myself for thinking of that, for that I used to even think that way in any way. But yeah, I'll leave my point at that.
Yeah, no, and I'm guilty of it too. In the past when I was a little more, I don't know, amped up, I guess, or but and I guess I'll give you another example too. I saw somebody on Twitter that's like, well, are you anti-war? Well, have you pulled out all your tax? Have you stopped paying taxes yet to the war machine? And it's like, well, listen, like Penguin said, you don't know what else that person's doing. Like maybe they're paying taxes. Maybe they, maybe they have some front corporation so they don't come take their kids away for not paying whatever the fucking thing, or like you don't know what maybe they've gotten everything else off the books, and sure, they still pay taxes. Also, by the way, taxes, guess what? Again, nobody's hands are fucking clean. Taxes don't pay for the war anymore. This hasn't been true for a long time. It might have been true when Konkin wrote a lot of these books, but guess what? They just print it and borrow it now. Like, your taxes go for very little of the government spending. Okay. So again, if you're using the dollar, which is what they're printing money to go pay for the war at all, like, never mind, you're just like, if you're just paying cash under the table or whatever and avoiding taxes, you're still supporting the war machine. So you can't be on somebody else for like, oh, well, you pay your taxes, so you can't be anti-war or whatever the fuck. You know, it's like, well, listen, like, you don't know what that person's doing. You don't know what their life situation is. They might be making a lot of sacrifices to see the change they want to see in the world. And taxes just ain't one of them because XYZ fucking whatever reason. You know what I mean?
Right.
I pay taxes now. And I am completely and totally truthful to the IRS whenever I pay taxes. But, like, you know, it's just like, listen, my father started his business. Oh, shit, I probably shouldn't have. Well, fuck it. Just so, because he was growing and selling weed at a time when it was legal. But guess what? You can't buy a house if you're fucking just buying and selling grass, right?
Right.
I could edit that out.
No, fuck it. It's legal. It's legal now. Listen, he's got like 12-foot plants in his backyard right now. He's happy and fucking it's legal there now, whatever.
That's legal. Great. Okay.
So where he is anyway. So, but at the time, you know, okay, he was selling weed. I didn't know this till years later. I just thought we had a lot of friends. Okay. So as a kid, I didn't know this, but he told me I figured it out and told me years later, but he was selling weed and I guess he was mowing a few lawns or whatever at the same time, but most of his money was coming from weed. So he started a landscaping business as a cover because you couldn't buy a house from fucking weed money. Right. And he wanted to eventually buy a house.
Right.
And so to do that, you got to be taxed and show fucking, you know, especially if you're self-employed, you got to show income for 3 years and blah, blah, blah. So he started a landscaping company just as cover for his fucking weed business. Okay. So are you going to, you know, so then that allowed him to continue his gray market activity. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, so
yeah,
that cover, and I wrote about this in an article a while back, but that cover of a little bit of like you know, what do you call it? Like compliance or whatever allows you to do a whole lot of other things that you might not have been able to do if you didn't just fucking pay a little bit of taxes and fill out your form. You know what I mean?
Right.
So like to shit on somebody. So like if you just said to my father, well, you still support the war machine because you're paying taxes, like, motherfucker, like my income is coming from ganja and I put a bunch of it into fucking, we go to anti-war protest I was dragged to all the anti-war protests when I was a kid and I hated it. I just wanted to go ride bikes, but you get my point though. It's like, you don't know what they're really fucking up to. They might be way more radical than you, but they're fucking paying taxes for cover. And they started this business for cover for a whole lot of other fucking very radical activity that you're not aware of. So everybody should just fucking shut their mouth about what everybody else is doing.
Yeah, why would you be aware of like some of the biggest things? There are things that you aren't going to be aware of for very good reason. I mean, we've talked about that episode 1 of the podcast. You know, if you can either be loud and public about something, variation of that. If you're going to be loud and public about something, or you can be, you know, doing that sort of thing, but you can't be both.
Yeah, exactly right.
Yeah.
Right. Any other points on this?
No, I think that's.
I think this was a good conver. This that you were right though. This needed to be said. This irks me a lot. I see it a lot still, and it still irks me. And I think everybody just needs to be more positive and supportive of each other rather than taking, you know, shots at the other person not doing enough.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. If you broaden your idea of like, I've mentioned this before, it's got to have been on multiple podcasts, but I feel like one of the past couple, I mean, this is a really simple concept, so it's not surprising, but like when you go out there and you interact with people, there's all sorts of people. So if you broaden your idea of what is liberating and what is opposing the state or the establishment matrix of a system, a lot of people do things to liberate themselves. You don't have to be part of a radical liberatory ideology to do that, and we don't want to. So it kind of goes back to the argument with Bitcoin, except I'm not going to take that stance on it. Where how do we get grandma to adopt this? Well, grandma can adopt this. Like grandma can garden, and it's just as that can be just as liberatory as somebody that's like ideological agorist to be gardening, collecting rainwater and stuff like that. But you'll be surprised how many people do these individual things because they are liberatory, even if they are not ideological agorists to have this kind of, complete ideology, this kind of goal. And of course, when you go to Conker's writings, that's kind of a direction he goes with it, where there are the people that are the counter economists, but even if you're not talking about direct, like what's the word, black market stuff, but people that are doing some sort of liberatory or kind of resisting the overall matrix of a system. And then there's the people that are doing things for ideological reasons and might co-opt them and vice versa even. And you kind of have to have like grandma adopting the liberatory strategy, even if she doesn't read, Agorist primer.
Yeah, no, I agree with you there. Yeah.
I will say, like, just as an addendum to it, and then maybe we'll wrap things up. I will say as an addendum, like, yeah, it's good to respect these, respect what people are able to do and understand that you don't know where anybody else is coming from. And frankly, other people's business is not your business, like that. That's just how it, or at least that's how I look at things. But you also, if you don't agree with how with somebody's activism, or you don't agree with what they're doing, or you don't agree with, their lifestyle choices and all that other stuff, well, there's freedom of association. You also don't have to have them in your life. Just because you have to respect their choices, and all this doesn't mean that also. I just want to be clear on that. But yeah, again, we reach out to a lot of audiences that can be very hardline, and I understand that. And, I'm sure we've all been there. But boy, like, yeah, I mean, the core concept of, I think, what a lot of us are espousing is, the respect principle. And so let's just, take it everywhere we can.
Sure. Yeah. Do you got to go? Are you in a?
Yeah, I should probably wrap up. So
this was the least wacky Into the Void we've had.
Yeah, it wasn't as crazy.
There are butter issues, but yeah, it was a great conversation for sure.
Well, okay. So wait, you got to answer one quick question, because it's been a cliffhanger for like 3 episodes in a row.
Oh boy. All right.
So you said it was like the prologue before we even started Into the Void. It was that one episode we had that just kind of went off the fucking rails, and we started talking about some wacky stuff. And you said, what was it? Existence is tripartite.
Yes, okay. I did say that.
Let's wrap. If you really got time, let's wrap up with what is the answer to that question?
Oh man, that's a big one.
Okay, I mean, we can leave it till next time, but it's been
yeah.
It's up to you. It's up to you. If we need to leave it till next time, we'll leave it till next time.
All right, I'll give a hint, but you're gonna have and we will leave it for next time, but you're gonna have to listen to know what I'm saying. You're gonna hear what I'm saying, and you're gonna say, "Wait, what?" And then, but that's what I'm gonna leave it as. So the tripartite, all that means essentially is that it's made up of 3 parts, and that is the structure and substance is the same between 3 things. The 3 things are the cosmos itself, the human being, or the sapient being, I should say, and listen to previous Into the Voids to understand why I say sapient being and not necessarily human, and the divine. But what do I mean by divine? That's the cincher. And I mean, I could give you a clue and say like
the infinite.
Well, the infinite, and maybe directions that like Carl Sagan or even Spinoza would go. But I'm going, or maybe Einstein even, but I'll leave it at that. Those are the 3 parts. What does all that mean? You're going to have to listen next time.
Ooh, another cliffhanger.
Yeah. Right. But it's a little richer now, because now you're like, wait a minute, this atheist is saying divine? What the hell's he talking about? Well, we'll find out.
Interesting. Are you talking about humans being gods?
I did say that the structure and substance of all 3 of those things are paradoxically the same. So
Well, you'll have to listen next time.
All right, well, hold on. One more cliffhanger. I want you, if you don't mind me saying this, I want you edit out if we need to, Penguin. But I want I want to hear about this dimensionality. I want to hear about these other dimensions. And I want to get in on that conversation too. So there we got 2 cliffhangers. How about that? We doubled up.
Okay, fair enough.
I want to talk about the rain of frogs. That's what I want to get into.
The rain of frogs. All right.
Yeah.
No, I'm down for next time. I'm trying not to get into it right now, so I'm just trying to keip it very you know you know what I mean. Right. I'm trying.
Well, we'll build up to where maybe that'll be the next cliffhanger.
Right. Well, man, this has been a great conversation. This was very
really
informative, and I think we all came to made some great points, and Penguin had some bangers as usual.
Yeah.
And I think everybody listening to this will get a lot out of it. So thanks for coming on again, man.
I've learned a lot, honestly. I gotta say before you go, I gained a lot from this conversation for sure.
Yeah, well, we questioned, I think a lot of the hearts of the legacy system we live in. So always a worthy conversation. Appreciate it, guys.
All right, thanks, brother. Have a good one.
You too.
See ya.
Okay, guys.
Peace.
Oh, be excellent to each other.
Be excellent to each other. Yeah.
Yeah.
I want